Hello, my name is Marissa Calhoun, class of 2010, and I'm thrilled to be coming to you from Reunion 2018. Today I have the distinct honor of sitting down with esteemed Bucknell alum Frank Davis, class of 1982. Frank recently gave a generous donation to the university in the amount of $5 million to support diversity and inclusion initiatives and the construction of our new Academic East building. As a thank you for Frank's thoughtful gift, the university will be renaming one of its residence hall facilities after him. Frank, how are you today?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you.
Great, great. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure as a fellow Washingtonian to have an opportunity to sit down with you and talk to you about your experiences at Bucknell and beyond. I always wondered, what was it like for you growing up in D.C.?
Oh, DC was a very interesting place. You know, there were lots of opportunities to experience things, you know, with the Smithsonian and the cultural infrastructure in Washington. But Washington has a different cultural ethnic side that always challenges us all to grow in unique ways. But overall, it was a great experience, and I definitely enjoyed the days of my youth.
I have to say, as someone who also grew up in D.C., I concur. You know, Washington, D.C. is such a vibrant place, so full of life and so many great cultural experiences. Transitioning from a place as unique and as vibrant as D.C. to a place like Bucknell, which is equally as exciting and amazing, but a little different. What was that like?
Well, it had its own unique set of challenges, but you know, I fell in love with Bucknell from the first time I came here. And at that age, you know, my number one goal was to attend an institution where I could become the absolute best that I can be, you know, and that is not just academically, but that was socially and culturally also. And Bucknell not only had wonderful academic facilities and a great reputation, but in my eyes, it had a student group that really seemed to be interested in embracing diversity and inclusion and learning about individuals from other places and other cultures. So it's a perfect match for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Tell me a little bit, you started to get into this, but tell me a little bit more about why you chose Bucknell specifically. Like, what was it about the university that drew you to it?
Well, that's a kind of an interesting question. I was an electrical engineering student here at Bucknell. Definitely a very challenging major, but you know, I wanted to go to an institution and be challenged. So Bucknell at that time had a really well-known engineering program. My advisors at that time in Washington all thought highly of Bucknell. They considered it as an elite Ivy class institution, and of course, you know, I made the interesting decision of coming here for the first time during cherry blossom weekend, where all of the trees were blooming, and you know, from day one, Bucknell was it was really the place that I considered as the elite, you know, first best academic institution for me.
Certainly, it's a picturesque campus. I can't imagine what it was like being here, cherry blossom weekend, and seeing all the trees in full bloom. And all year round, Bucknell's just beautiful. Tell me a little bit about your interest on campus. What did you do while you were here?
Well, I took a sort of a unique approach to education in my college years. It wasn't just enough for me to be an electrical engineering student, you know, alone. So I was very active in a number of different organizations here. Tau Kappa Epsilon fraternity, which at that time, to credit the organization, embraced individuals from different backgrounds and different colors. And that's why to this day I still remain friends with a lot of the TEAC graduates from Bucknell. But I also did a lot of other things from student government. I was the Black Student Alliance president here also while I was here. and charter member of Alpha Phi Omega, the National Service Fraternity. So, the way I've always looked at it, educational experience is about being well-rounded. It's about growing academically, but growing socially too, and also doing some things where you can give back to the institution.
And it's so interesting you mentioned the history of Bucknell being a place that embraces diversity and at least at its very core tries to create an environment for students where they can feel at home and feel welcome. Bucknell has a very long history, in fact, doing this. A lot of people don't know, but there's actually a stop on the Underground Railroad in the back of campus where President Loomis's wife used to help harbor runaway slaves. This was an interesting discovery for me when I was a student here. And there's a gentleman by the name of Charles R. Bell, who was a janitor. He ended up being a janitor. He was a former slave, but he was harbored by President Loomis's wife, and they allowed him to stay. And after he was a janitor, he went on to get his degree here at Bucknell and graduate and became very successful. So I'm very proud as a student of color who attended Bucknell, former student of color who attended Bucknell, of our rich history around being accepting and inviting for diverse students. So I just wanted to mention that.
And to expand on that, some of the lesser known facts that are seldom discussed are Bucknell has been on the radar screen for diversity and inclusion for some time. In fact, Bucknell was even mentioned in a very large study done by W.E.B. Du Bois back in the in fact, I think it was right around 1900, that talked about the dynamics of Bucknell graduating multiple African Americans, not too long after the end of the Civil War.
Mm-hmm. Very, very rich and important history, for sure. On the topic of diversity, though, you certainly exemplify what it means to be an engaged alumnus. You recently made a tremendous gift, and I know that everyone has thanked you, but I want to thank you as a fellow alumni for making that contribution once again, because I know that it's going to serve so many students for years to come. As a part of the gift, I'd like you to talk a little bit about the purpose of the gift, but as a part of the gift, you made sure that there was some part of the gift that would be dedicated specifically to diversity initiatives and to seeing diversity furthered on campus. And I'd love to know why that's so important to you.
The way I look at things in society, even back to the founding fathers, you heard words that they use from promoting life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. And, in order to create a more perfect union. Well, diversity and inclusion is really at the foundation of those pursuits. And Bucknell has done a very admirable job up until this point, but the way I looked at it is if I could go and make a contribution to help advance that cause, advance that mission, then it serves the common good and it promotes the wider best interest. And so it's something that I'm looking forward to seeing, how Bucknell moves into the future. But I have nothing but high hopes that Bucknell is going to be the beacon that shows other people just how it's supposed to be done.
Sure, and certainly, from the perspective of sustainability, it's a good investment for the university to make. It's good for alums who can make those sort of investments in our initiatives around diversity to make those investments. It will help to cultivate an environment where the students who are at Bucknell are more prepared to go out into the world and to be sort of beacons of Bucknell outside of our bubble. So again, thank you so much for doing that. Can you talk a little bit more about the gift you gave, its purpose, and some of the other things it'll do on campus?
Well, the gift was really focused towards promoting diversity and inclusion, not only in academia and education, but also from a cultural perspective. The way I've always looked at diversity and inclusion is best achieved as a bilateral pursuit, where people from different races, creeds, and colors really come together and recognize that the best way things are going to get done is if there's some give and some take. And if we can go and help promote that through academia and through the social interactions here on campus, then mission accomplished, and we will all be better off in the long term because of it.
How do we hear this word diversity, inclusion. I feel like it's, it almost feels just like the catchphrase of the moment. How do you define diversity, and what should embracing diversity actually look like?
When I look at diversity and inclusion, my view of it is probably a little bit different than what you would see from other individuals. I think of diversity and inclusion as rooted in humility, where the basic components of humility are dignity, morality, decency, and philanthropy. And if you include all of that in your value set and your wiring as individuals and as institutions and as organizations, then we're all going to win in the long run. And if there's a void and those things are missing, however, then we're all in trouble. Bad things are on the horizon. So I sort of look at diversity and inclusion a different way than most people would. But the end result is, we all have to go and embrace working to make the world tomorrow a better place than it is today. And that requires us all to work hard, to make sacrifices and to work with others to achieve that goal.
And certainly, your selflessness will help contribute to that goal. So thank you again. If you could point to one lesson you wish you had known in the beginning of your college career that maybe you get now as someone a little bit outside of that experience, what would it be?
The only thing I really would have gone back and changed was when I came here as a student, I sort of underestimated the rigors of academia, really what it takes to go and succeed in this environment as a student and as a member of the community. I always did well as a member of the community because, I always believed in being part of the solution. But in terms of academia, being successful at a place like Bucknell requires a certain tenacity that some people come here with it and they understand, and other people have to learn it through exposure and effort. And with me, it was learning it through exposure and effort. And even though I love Bucknell greatly, my first couple of years would have been much more enjoyable if I had learned about some of those tenacity elements a little bit earlier on. But mission accomplished, no harm done. And so in general, that's a good thing.
Yes, and at the end of the day, that's what counts. Mission accomplished, no harm done. Well, thank you so much, Frank. It has been a pleasure and an honor, as always, to sit down with you, a fellow Bucknellian who's doing amazing things out in the world. And we are pleased that you came and you allowed us to have this time to sit down with you and interview you. Sure. So thank you again.
I love Bucknell. There's some great people here, and including the alumni and the students and the faculty and the current leadership here, and I think highly of all of them. So it's always my pleasure being here.